Good afternoon, and welcome to what is actually the final webinar in our Ready for Alma series. We've run, well, this is the fifth, so we've run now four webinars, and today, as a kind of a summary, as a finishing presentation, we are going to look at what makes, well, not just any next-generation library services platform unique, but what makes Alma as a library services platform unique. Now, I thought what we would do is we would have a start by actually considering the history of the library services platform, or indeed, as it was called, when we're talking about history, the library management system or the integrated library system. So, in the 1930s, this is where we first see the use of automation in relation to the core features that we would expect nowadays a library management system to be managing. And this start occurred in the US, where we start to see the first appearance of circulation being managed, in this case, by punch cards. By the 1950s, we're still using punch cards, and indeed we would find that there were at least 12 UK libraries using this punch card system. So it hung around for a while because, in fact, my own local library at home in London was using a punch card-based system in the 1970s when I was a regular user of the library every Saturday choosing my books. And in fact, I would have to admit that when I started working in that same library authority in the early 80s, they were still using the same punch card system. But by the 60s and 70s, aside from the punch card system still being quite prevalent, we started to see the arrival of standards, specifically the MARC standard, and more accessible computer technology. And this was really the beginning of the computerized library management system, where we started to see not only circulation managed by computers, but also the cataloging and indeed the sharing of the catalog via computerized systems. Although generally what we're talking about is enormous mainframe systems. As we moved into the 80s and the 90s, we saw the advent of the Internet, of Z3950, and subsequently federated searching, which would allow us to enhance the services offered by library systems to the end users, not just to the staff users. And of course, we faced the challenge of the Y2K problem, of the year 2000 problem, where a number of the library management systems that people were using were not capable of dealing with that change in date format, from a format that started with 19 to a format that started with 20, or rather that ability to have the last two numbers of a date format. And this prompted really quite a shake-up in the library systems market, because a lot of libraries, a real huge number, had to change their library management system. And I hope that this really instilled in people that they really had to have an awareness of the need to have a future-proofed system in future. Then bringing us up to date for the new millennium, for the 21st century, we saw the move to web-based systems, which meant so much more flexibility for libraries because there wasn't the need to have client-based systems and client software installed on PCs. This web-based systems became a jumping-off point for more development, such as software as a service, cloud computing, and the move towards making the library software more open by using the idea of this platform, the library services platform, which exposes services, which gives libraries the opportunity to use APIs to do more open activities. Alongside these changes in technology, there have been very much a a period of changing needs of the libraries themselves. Libraries now have added electronic and digital materials to their resources and need a system that can manage all three. So we're adding the E, electronic, the D, to the P, if you like, the print that we've always had to manage, either manually or by automated systems. But what libraries need is not to have this management in separate systems or with separate workflows, but unified, all together in the same place. And of course, the electronic materials need very specific type of management. For example, if you compare it to how we managed print-based serials in the past, the e-based serials, so our e-packages, our e-journals, need additional management of things like the license, managing the data, managing the activation of the subscription to the e-resource, managing the access, who can and who can't have access, and indeed managing the resolver management as we integrate these resources into discovery systems. Additionally, we're finding that libraries want to move away from silos of information and have tight integration with other systems, whether those systems are elsewhere in your university, such as a student record system, or perhaps integration with material vendors, such as Coots or Dawson's, and indeed integration between that e-resource that's managed in your library management system but is surfaced in your discovery system. We have found very much in recent years that libraries not only focusing on practical needs, such as the management of e-resources and digital resources alongside print materials and the integration, but they are very much under pressure to deliver efficiencies within their working environments. And this, I suppose, is linked to my final point, which is a pressure for the libraries to actually achieve a lower total cost of ownership for the library management side. And it's very much a focus on the financial issues. In this present financial climate, organizations are constantly looking for ways to save money, seek savings wherever they can. So whether that means perhaps not replacing a particular post if somebody leaves the organization, or whether it is to lower the overall cost of the system, there is very much a driver for the library services platform, the library management system, to deliver these efficiencies and lower total cost of ownership alongside the functional enhancements. So, obviously, what I'm trying to say is that these changing needs, changing technology, and how we can bring these together into this new style of next-generation library services platform is essentially our way of saying, you know what? Alma is the market leader as a next-generation library services platform. And so what I really want to now move on to is talking very specifically about Alma. And over the last couple of months, doing these webinars for you, this series of webinars, I hope that I have been able to demonstrate how Alma really does meet the changing needs of the 21st century library. But what I want to do with the slide that we now have in front of us is perhaps just a quick reminder of the high-level features of Alma that I think makes it a unique solution. And very much these are those sort of high-level important features that I hope I've been able to cover over these past couple of months in these webinars. So Alma is a true multi-tenant software as a service solution. It is multi-tenant in that it is a single instance of software where each institution, each customer has their own private slice, private institution on that software. But it does mean that we are able to create efficiencies by regularly providing updates, so no waiting 2 or 3 years for a bug fix or an enhancement, and we're able to make those upgrades in a matter of a couple of hours overnight to all our customers using this multi-tenant environment. True software as a service, you're not installing anything locally. We take care of all of that. Alma is a real single unified solution. I've certainly demonstrated over these last few weeks the ability for Alma to manage that print, electronic, and digital in a single interface, whether you are searching your local catalog to retrieve materials, indeed whether your end users are searching the discovery system to do the same, or whether you are managing acquisitions and so forth. Everything in the same place, managed in the same way. We have, as I've just made mention of, a sophisticated discovery system with tight integration, and that's the Primo system. And I will actually make a little more reference to that later when I actually do a little bit of software demoing. I know I have talked over and over again about our innovative workflows or automation, whereby the majority of tasks can run automatically unless there is an exception, which will then draw your attention to a particular task by stating, this task needs your attention, the rest of them are all fine, that there is no exception, there's no missing data, there's no particular thresholds reached, and we need some attention. Analytics, one of my favorite areas of the system to demonstrate. We produced for you a lovely session that looked at being able to move from a position of hindsight to insight to foresight and really see how Alma can help you with data-driven decision-making. For those of you who are perhaps working in a collaborative consortia environment, Alma delivers collaborative networks so that libraries can work together in some areas, but in other areas keep their work private. But things like a shared union and catalogue and so forth. We have an amazing community of Alma users, and they are all so keen and so active within our community. We have special interest groups, product working groups, whereby customers advise and make suggestions for future enhancements and developments for the product. And we wouldn't be where we are today without those customers. In terms of the integration that I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, we do actually supply Alma with a number of out-of-the-box integrations for our institutional authentication systems, such as LDAP or SAML. And I hope that I really have been able to demonstrate to you the real depth of functionality you find within Alma, but the ability to configure Alma to your needs. We're not imposing new processes on you. You are configuring Alma to support the ways that you have to work. Okay. So that was the kind of high-level stuff, but what I thought we'd look at today for this final webinar is some of the more specific areas of Alma. Sometimes I'm going to be showing you some really small features, but features in Alma that I think can make a massive difference to the way people work and are, I think, unique to Alma. I think these are features of Alma that you will not find in any other of the next generation library services platform. And so these features will often add some real value to the system. So if you'll just bear with me a moment, let's get out of our slide presentation and let's log into Alma. Okay, so I have my Alma ready and waiting for me to log in. We're now running on the October release. So I'll just log in to Alma. And so I say, we're going to look not sort of, the circulation area or the cataloging area. I'm going to pick little features that I think really do deliver that added value and are things you won't find in other systems. And in some cases, I even asked my colleagues, going, what do you think that, one of the little bits that really sets Alma aside from other products out there in the market? So let's have a look. And we're going to start with trials. Now, I certainly mentioned trials when we were talking about e-resources a few weeks ago, but I just want to remind you of the trial functionality, because this, aside from analytics, is another area I think is just fabulous in Alma. Now, we will all, if we work within the e-resources area, have spent time managing trials of e-resources before we decide to actually commit often quite massive amounts of our budget. And I mean, yes, you can run a trial by making a URL available to people, or even just activating a resource in your discovery system and then waiting to see if people discover it and if they use it. But what Alma provides you with is the mechanics to actually manage that trial process, and that includes the ability to actually pose questions via an online questionnaire, to analyze the results, and then to keep all that information in Alma so you can refer back to it in future. So let's just have a look at an example we've got set up here. So if you are creating a trial, we've got an area here just to summarize, the basic information you need when we're going to start the trial, where we're going to end the trial. And you've got a couple of options. You can make your trial available to everybody, or if you're wanting to work with a specific group of people to have a look at the resource that you're trialing, you can actually invite individual participants. But the way it works is Alma generates this participant page URL, and so they will go to this URL, and then they have access to the resource, but also a link to a survey form that you've created. So let's have a look at that next. So you create a survey form, and this always reminds me a little bit of like products like SurveyMonkey, because what you can do is you can either write the questions yourselves, or indeed we have a bit of a knowledge base of questions that have been created in the past, and you can specify what type of question it's going to be. Do you want a yes-no answer, a scale of satisfaction, or is it free text? So you put together the online questionnaire, and as part of the trial, your participants have access to this online questionnaire, and if we just go to the analysis tab, you can see that they then fill in the questionnaire, and the answers are then arrive for you here in Alma on the analysis tab. And so you've got all the information in one place for you to then make your decision. And then if we go back to the summary, once the decision's been made, you can actually log what you've decided to do in this results area, why you decided on that result, when a purchase decision was made, and so forth. And that, I think, is so useful that you have always got this information linked to the title, the package that you were trialing. And I'm certainly not aware of anybody else who can provide you that bit of added value. Now, I should stress, I maybe should have stressed at the beginning, anything that I'm showing you here that I'm saying are sort of, added value, they are standard parts of Alma. You get these as standard. These are not things we're saying, they're pretty fancy, would you like to pay extra money for them? These are all part of your standard Alma system. Okay, the next area I'd like to draw your attention to is the ability to manage your PDA services. So down here at the bottom of our acquisitions menu, we've got patron-driven acquisition. Now, as you'd expect, Alma allows you to run patron-driven acquisition services, so you would be importing ebook records from the vendor, depending on what the agreement is that you have with that vendor. So many accesses of those records by your patrons might then trigger the purchase. The vendor can electronically send the invoices to Alma. We notify you the invoices have arrived. You can go through the purchase process and so forth. But the extra little bit that actually I demonstrated, I showed to somebody at an exhibition a few months ago, and they were so thrilled by this extra little bit here. So we set up a profile for the PDA, but what you can do is, for example, perhaps your PDA is time limited because you've only got a certain amount of budget to spend on this patron-driven project. So you can at any point pause the process. It may be that you want to retain these records, but you can't have it live until you've got some more budget available. Or if the project has come to an end, you can simply terminate. But this is the feature that really excited this colleague in the library world, is the ability to permanently remove the inventory items if you know you're finishing this particular stage of PDA and then you're going to import some other records. And so this again is just a standard feature of the Alma PDA service. Another feature that I think is fabulous and so straightforward is the overlap analysis. So under our resource management heading, we've got an overlap analysis here. And this means that if you're wanting to run some overlap checks on your e-resources, perhaps if you're looking for packages you can cancel from your existing stock, or if you're wanting to compare some new package that you're wondering whether to purchase, then you can run this overlap analysis. You can also do it with files where you don't already own the resources, files that have been provided by the vendor. What I will do, rather than run it now, because I am aware there's quite a few other things I want to show you, I will just show you what the completed test looks like. And it runs so quickly. This is one I was doing yesterday, and for all of the reports to be generated, 12 seconds. So it's certainly real time. And so, for example, for this particular overlap analysis, where I just chose 2 packages from within our central knowledge base, we have got 3 different reports generated. There's a complete overlap report. Then we've got a report that shows us where there is some partial overlap between the packages, and then a report that shows us the unique titles. Let's just open the unique titles report, and it opens it in Excel, which again in itself is pretty useful, because that means you can also then use this data outside of Alma if you want to do some further analysis. Let me just move it. I've got a couple of screens running on my machine at the moment, and it's, of course, opened on the other screen. There you go. Let's just open at least one of these columns so it looks a bit, that's what we want, isn't it? So this is our list of the titles that are unique in this particular analysis. So such an incredibly useful feature there, the overlap analysis. Now, what else did I want? I know what I wanted to show you, fulfillment. Now, this is perhaps very much what I meant by saying it's a tiny little feature, but to me it just really opens up opportunities for using mobile devices. It is very much about creating efficiencies, and it is simply the fact that Alma produces shelf pick lists in real time. So there's no waiting till a certain time of the day, because a static report has got to be run, and as soon as that report is run for you to go take stock off the shelves, it's technically out of date because somebody could be making a reservation at that point in time. With Alma, your pick from the shelf list is exactly real time. So you could be picking items from the shelf and have extra items added to that list as you're working if you were using something like a tablet to walk around the shelves. You don't have to have a printed list. You can use a tablet. And indeed, as you find the items, you can even print the slip so they're waiting for you when you get back to the printer and you've finished going around the shelves. And so I say, tiny little feature, but a real improvement on what the older generation of systems do. And in fact, while we're just looking at the actual shelf pick list, there's a couple of other shelf check functionalities here. So, for example, a list that tells you which are the items that you need to take off the hold shelf. These have all expired, and you can work on these. You can either reshelve them, you can change the expiry date, and again, if you're working on a hold shelf that's quite sort of remote from the main desk or something, have this on a tablet. It's just so efficient. And the other pick list we saw in the menu was the active hold shelf, if you just need to check which should be on the shelf and perhaps, maybe even send out some additional reminders to people. Now, asking some of my colleagues what was their, if you like, their favourite bits of Alma, and this is actually the piece that my boss really likes. He thinks this is, again, it's a little feature, but it's so useful. So, this is called the Fulfillment Configuration Utility. And this is for, let's sort of paint a scenario. You've got a student who wants to check a book out, but for some reason they know they're not going to be able to bring the book back to the library on the date that it's due, and maybe for some reason know they won't be able to get access to facilities to renew it. And so this is quite a nice little feature. Let me show you how this works. So I'm just going to search for our patron that we're dealing with. Obviously, I could be scanning in their barcode as well, but here's my patron, so I'm going to select her. And, of course, we know that she's a graduate student, did all the stuff that's linked to her record. And she is wanting to borrow the item that she has in her hand. So obviously, you'd be scanning it in. I'll just type in our item number here, and in fact there it is confirming the title that it should be and so on. So yes, that's the item we're dealing with. So the first thing she's saying now, if I take this out today, when will it be due back? And I can say, well, bearing in mind your particular user group, the item, and how your user group interacts with it, it uses our default loan rule, which means it's a 4-week loan, and so it would be due back on the 17th of November. And in fact, here's all the policies that have calculated that information. And she says, well, here's the problem. I am not going to be able to get it back into the library, nor am I in a position to renew it until the 25th of November. How much will I owe? We've all been asked this question, and you're sort of going, oh, well, hang on a minute. Let me look at a calendar and count on my fingers. But what we can do here is we can say, well, if you weren't to bring it back until the 25th of November, there would be a fine of my database happens to be set up here for US dollars, so there'd be a fine of £4. And so she can weigh up, is she going to make the effort to try and renew it, or is she going to, pay the £4 fine when she brings it up. So such a useful little feature, really, really interesting and so convenient. Of course, there is another feature that would actually mean you wouldn't even have to use this lovely fulfillment configuration utility, and that's actually auto-renewal. And there are a lot of our customers, certainly in the UK, who are taking advantage of this auto-renewal functionality. You set this up, and it essentially means that you're still checking material out. It still has a due back date, but if nobody has requested that item, it hasn't been recalled, then Alma will automatically renew it for the patron. And then when it comes to the next due back date, same applies. No recalls. Automatically renew it for the patron. So that means that you're ceasing that kind of antagonistic relationship with your end users. You must bring the book back even if nobody else wants it and you just want to take it out again so that you don't owe us money. Now, let them keep the books until specifically quickly somebody wants it back. And I mean, if you are in the position to run a system like this, where I certainly spoke to one library who were like, well, the fines go into our book budget, so that would be a real tragedy for us. But if that's not an issue for you, it also not only offers a real benefit to your end users, but actually it's saving you time. Because certainly when I worked in academic libraries, the amount of time we had to spend making sure that our till had money in it, that we balanced it at the end of the day, that we sorted it out the following morning, do away with the majority of that work. You might only want to charge fines if somebody ignores a recall or something like that. So again, just a tiny bit of functionality, but it's making a huge difference to a lot of our Alma users. Okay, just a couple more things I want to show you. One more feature within Alma, and then we're going to have a quick look at Primo. Digitization. We have a digitization on demand workflow. So that means that where your end users can place requests via the discovery system. Traditional request obviously would normally be for a print book or perhaps an interlibrary loan. They can also use essentially the same functionality to place a request for digitization. And so that digitization request will then appear in Alma in the same way you would expect a hold request, and will start to go through the automatic workflow. Now, the Alma digitization on-demand workflow, which we're just having a look at now, actually stops partway through so that, and let's just open this particular record, you can actually carry out the copyright clearance checking. So everything will happen automatically. It'll come into Alma, and then you will be notified that it is waiting for copyright clearance, so you can do your checks. You can then add a copyright clearance number that you might get or a note, confirm this, and then once it's been approved, it then carries on through the automated workflow. It is moved on to the staff who carry out the digitization. They can do the work, and then they can automatically also email the digitization to the end user. So that, again, very, very useful as digitization on demand becomes an increasingly valuable service within academic libraries. Okay. Now, finally, we're going to go into the Primo, into the Alma Discovery System, Primo. Now, these webinars are about Alma. We're not changing that. But what I wanted to highlight as the final feature is the tight integration between Alma and the My Account areas of Primo. So we're in Primo now, and our user could search the database, could be placing a hold, placing a digitization on demand request. But what I want to just have a look at is what we call the My Account area. So what we've got here is all of the tight integration with Alma that benefits our end user. So, for example, our user here can see that these are the items that they have on loan, that they are due back on this date, and for some reason these have a status of not renewable. Now, I'm not sure if this user's got any historic loans at the moment. No. But what would appear here, fairly obvious from the name of this feature, would be actually their own loan history. So rather than always having to come and ask the library staff about a book they know they borrowed some while ago but managed not to make a note of for their bibliography, they can come and they can check their own historic loans. And then you can see from this side here that they can monitor their requests. And in this area, you wouldn't just be seeing reservations, hold requests, but if they had done any digitization on demand requests, or if they had any interlibrary loans, they could monitor their progress here as well. If they have any fines or fees to pay, oh, now it looks like our user has got some money to pay. By the fact that it says no title, this is telling me that this was a fee that was applied to the student's account. It's not a fine, it's a fee, but they can see at this point in time what it is they owe. And what some of our libraries have done, again making use of integration profiles that we supply with Alma, is they've integrated with online payment systems. The one that we supply the integration for is actually WPM. It's a very well-known system. And so what you could offer is a little pay button here, and so the student can actually pay off their fines without having to come into the library and, again, save you the bother with the till, with the cash and everything. If there are any blocks and messages for the user that have been set up in Alma, they will display to the user under this area. And with the personal settings, they can make some changes, such as if there is a new address or something like that. So, all of this stuff that you see in the My Account area, all in real time. As soon as this user checks out a new book, it will appear on this list of active loans. But everything here is because of that tight integration with Alma, as indeed is the fact that when they search for an item in Primo, they will be able to see exactly where the book is in the library, but most importantly, is it available? And if it's already checked out to somebody else, what date is it due back? And all of that real-time information is coming straight from Alma into Primo. Okay, well, that's really all I wanted to show you within Alma and indeed Primo today. So let's just go back to my slides for just a final summary slide of what we've hopefully learned from today. And let's just go on to my final slide. So, in summary then, I'd like to wrap up just with some key points about Alma. Alma is very much the market leader for next generation, unified library services platforms. We have more than 500 institutions worldwide who think we most certainly are unique. And I think some of the reasons that, we have managed to bring this, say, more than 500 institutions into the Alma community is the uniqueness of our monthly releases, which is possible because our development is carried out using the agile methodology. I think what's also important to note and makes us unique amongst the other systems out there is that we focus exclusively on the higher education, the university research, and some sort of national library sector. And that is of a real benefit to our customers because we are focusing our development on your needs. We're not being pulled in different directions by different types of libraries with very different needs. We also have a complementary suite of products to support your needs, including Rosetta for digital preservation, and of course Primo, which we looked at, and our lovely new Leganto, our reading list product that's currently live actually in some of our development partners. And of course there's Campus M, our mobile solution. And as I referred to earlier, we are a customer-centered organization working closely with these product working groups, with advisories, and so forth. Now, for those of you that for those of you who haven't attended any of the previous webinars, as Ivor mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, as indeed were all the others, and they're available. You can contact us. They're actually available for you to listen to on our YouTube channel as well. But for those of you that have attended these webinars in the past, you'll know that I like to end my webinars by giving the final word to Dilbert. And so here today we have got Dilbert, or rather the pointy-head boss's view on cloud computing and platforms.
That's Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That's superb. If you're ready for the Q&A, we've got a couple of questions that have come in. So let's crack on with the first one. Interestingly phrased. The mega menu is very mega. Can it be made role-based? So I guess the question there is, can we simplify it?
Absolutely. I know exactly what you mean by saying it's mega. Let's bob back into Alma. So, yeah, I'm logged in. Alma's a role-based system. I'm logged in basically for the purposes of me demoing all sorts of things to people as almost like a super user, a systems administrator. And yes, I like that phrase. I might use that. That is a bit of a mega menu because I've got access to every single area of the system. But what I'll do is I will log in as a user that works in a much smaller, has a much smaller area of responsibility. So if I now log in as my colleague, Ewan, who works in our user services area. So Alma recognises that it's Ewan logging in now, that he has different roles in the library. In fact, the eagle-eyed of you will notice that he has different widgets on the dashboard. But if we go and have a look at the menu, so Ewan works in user services, and there already the menu is much shorter. Now he has all of the fulfillment areas, a tiny bit of resource management, i.e. he can search the catalogue, and he has some administration because he has some seniority within the team. Let me just log in as one other user, and we will log in as Katie, who is a cataloger. And let's see what her menu looks like. Now again, different widgets on the dashboard, very small task list. Katie is a cataloger, so she has no access to acquisitions. She has a lot of access to functions within the resource management area, no fulfillment, and all she can do within administration is she can run a job, she does some exports for us, and she can have a look at reports that have been created by other people. So yes, depending on your role, you see what you are allowed to see, what you need to see within the menu. So it certainly becomes less mega. I hope that answers the question, okay?
That does indeed. I think that clarifies it neatly. And a similar question, a kind of a related question, I guess, is regarding the dashboard. Can you make it completely unique to yourself? In other words, can you go a little bit beyond the role-based configuration and select just the graphs and the tables that you want to see at a particular time?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, it is role-based, but so what Katie can do, she doesn't have the ability to even create reports. She's very much reliant on reports, and widgets are the result of a report. She is reliant on reports that are made available to her. So if I click on this Add Widget button, so somebody who has the roles that Katie has only has these widgets that they can choose from. But again, if we go back to Ewan, who works in a different area and has sort of slightly more seniority within his team than Katie, because, for example, he can also create reports, you'll see that somebody with the different sort of bits of roles that he has a different set of list, and it's a bit longer. But certainly these roles that you apply to individuals can be customized, because it may be that perhaps Katie, although she's a cataloger, maybe she helps out on a Saturday when it's 24-hour opening, and so also has the ability to check out books. So you can actually mix and match the different roles. But yes, the dashboard is entirely configurable by the individual. So Ewan picks widgets, and you know what? He might choose no widgets at all. He might think, this isn't the best way that I work. I just want a neat, clear screen when I come in, just with my task list on. So yeah, you customize it to what means something to you.
Okay, excellent. And one last question that's just popped up. If every library in the UK is unique, although we all work in very similar ways, at a very high level, what could I do with Alma to make it unique for my institution and the way that we like to work?
The way in which you can make it unique for yourselves is really the configuration options. Let's just see what Ewan can configure. Now, I'll tell you what, I'll just bob back in as myself with the sort of the super user credentials and me mega menu. You can configure the system to meet your needs. Let me just pop in my password. Can't type and talk at the same time. So, for example, as you can see, there's configuration for acquisitions, for resource management, for fulfillment, for managing users, and then a general configuration. So, for example, let's just think of one. Well, the configuration for users. So you define your own user groups, and then those user groups, you define how they interact with resources within the library. So your university likes to have lots and lots of user groups for year 1 undergraduates, year 2 undergraduates, year 3 undergraduates, because your university has different loan rights every year, and maybe your university is also a teacher training institution, so you have a different user group for your teacher training students, because they are allowed to borrow books a lot longer than a physics student, because the teachers go out on teaching practice, they go out on placement, and they can have a lot more items out on loan than your physics students, because you've got a big children's book collection, and these teacher training students take books out to use in the classroom and also borrow other teaching resources. So that's the sort of thing, because yes, you, University 1, are unique, because University 2 just says, no, everybody's a student, we don't make a difference between graduate and undergraduate, everybody gets the same roles. But in our institution, we charge fines for our faculty or something like that. And across the system, you configure those rules, those policies to suit your institution.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That's all of the questions that we've had come through the chat box. So I think we'll probably wrap it up now. If you've got any questions or comments that you would like to ask, and they pop into your mind later on, do feel free to send an email through to us. My name is Ivor Morgan. You can reach me on ivor.morgan@exlibrisgroup.com, and we'll get the answers back to you. Please do look out for our email with the link to the webinar recording, which will be with you in the next few days. On behalf of Elizabeth and the team at Ex Libris, thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you all a very great afternoon. Thank you now, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.